Hey, MathCook here. This video contains one of many examples in my Algebra 2 library. The rest of those examples, along with hundreds of other videos, are only available at mathkook.com. Let's MathCook it up. This question says, find the equation of the hyperbola from its graph. So we have a hyperbola opening left and right, so we know that who is the major axis? Well, let's take a look at our two types of hyperbolas. So if it's opening left or right, the x-axis is the major axis and the x squared term is going to be positive. If the hyperbola was opening up and down, the y squared term would be positive and y would be the major axis. So we are looking at this formula here for this hyperbola. And let's kind of go over what A and B are. So A is the distance from the center to the vertex. So that's this distance here. B is the distance from the center to the top or bottom of the box here. Kind of like the covertex here. So that's the distance to the, we'll say, pseudo-covertex. All right, great. So now let's go ahead and find out our center as well. The center is HK. So the center in this case is right here at the point 2, 0. So I'm going to go ahead and label that over here. So our center is 2, 0. So that's our H and K value. We'll need those. All right, so now we know we're going to use this formula here. We know A is the distance from the center to the vertex here. So see how that goes from 2 to 6? So we know A is 4. So what's the only thing that we're missing right now? Well, we're missing B. In order to write our equation of the hyperbola, we need the center, HK, and we need A and B. We know A, but we don't know B. How are we going to find B? Well, they also give us a point on the hyperbola. So let's go ahead and plug in all this information to find our B value. I'm going to go ahead and erase this chart here so we have room to work with. So here's our equation. Now, for the point, how are we going to plug in this point to help us find B? Well, it's any point on the hyperbola we can plug in. I'm going to plug in this one because that's the one given. And we're going to call this x and y. So our 7 is we're going to plug in for x. And then -2 we're going to plug in for y. So let's go ahead and plug all this information in. So our x was 7. H was 2. So 7 minus 2 squared over a squared. We know our a value is 4 minus, and then y, or y value was -2 minus k, which was 0, over b squared, remember that's what we're trying to find right now, equals 1. All right, so now we just need to simplify this. 7 minus 5 squared, so that's 7 minus 2 squared, which is 5 squared, which is 25. And then we have 4 squared, which is 16, minus, and then we have -2 squared, which is basically 4, over b squared equals 1. All right, so let's go ahead and subtract the 25 over 16 over. Now, we want to get a common denominator, so the 1 here is really, I'll go ahead and multiply this by 16 over 16. So you'll get, this ends up being 16 over 16 minus 25 over 16, which is -9 over 16. That's going to equal -4 over b squared. All right, we are almost there. We just got to get b squared by itself here. So what I'm going to do is cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply these guys and then set that equal to these guys here. So we'll start off with a b squared times -9. That is -9 b squared. And then on the right side, we'll have -4 times 16, which is -64. We'll divide both sides by -9, and we'll get 64 over 9. Now, you can go ahead and solve for b if you wanted to. You could take the square root of both sides, but we don't really need to do that because, remember, in the equation, we just need to know what b squared is. So I'm going to leave it like this. So now, remember, we want the equation of the hyperbola, so let's go ahead and plug in all of our information here. So we have x minus, and then h, which we know is 2. So this is going to be x minus 2 squared over a squared. And then a squared is 4 squared minus, then we have y minus k, which was 0 squared, over b squared, which was 64 over 9, equals, and then there's a 1 on the other side. All right, so now let's just clean this up a little bit, and then that'll be our final answer for this hyperbola. So x minus 2 squared over 4 squared, which is 16, minus y minus 0 is just y, so y squared over 64 over 9. And you could also write that 64 over 9, you could rewrite this as just flip the 9 up to the top, so it'd be 9y squared minus 60 over 64. But this works too. All right, so here is our final answer for our hyperbola. Hey Kook, if you found this video helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment. For unlimited access to all of my Algebra 2 videos, visit mathkook.com. Thanks for watching.